Hello and welcome to Amateur Radio Topics. I'm Kevin, VK6 Lima Whiskey, and in this episode I'll be talking about CQ Worldwide, various tower and antenna projects, new call signs for VK contest operators, SO2R, and some other HF receive antenna projects that I've been working on over the last few months. But first of all, CQ Worldwide. Well, conditions at the moment seem quite good. They're not fantastic, but they're pretty good, and there's regular openings on 10 metres and 15 into Europe from here, and signals are quite good. The openings on 10 are a little bit short, but with the increase in activity that you get with CQ Worldwide, that tends to maximise what you can do in that contest. Geomagnetic activity is quite low, so I don't think there's anything forecast. There's no storms forecast, I don't believe, so the weekend could be quite good from a conditions point of view. I mean, here in VK6 we need fairly good conditions on the HF bands to make it work in CQ Worldwide, but it is the biggest participation contest of the year, so normally that does help. The activity seems to help you find those openings and band conditions that otherwise perhaps you wouldn't realise were always there. So that's going to be quite good. Up until a month or two ago, I wasn't really sure I could do CQ Worldwide. We've been rebuilding a workshop and a shack. In fact, that's still in progress. We've been rebuilding my old workshop into a studio for my XYL, Julie, who's very keen on pottery. And so that's been quite a big project, probably a bigger project than I would have at first imagined. And that's nearly finished. She's actually moved into that studio now, so that's great. At the moment, I'm still without a shack technically, but I decided a few weeks ago that I could probably make it work here in the house, in the laundry area. Got quite a big laundry, and set everything up in here. So I've got everything set up at the moment for single operator 2 radio in the laundry area, and I couldn't. I took both my towers down because we really needed to do that to commence the building works for the new workshop and shack. So that was a bit of a problem, and it wasn't really possible to put both towers back up for various reasons. So I've put one of the towers up, the tower that's about 80 feet, 24 metres. And I've got the spider beam on top of that at about 80 feet, and then underneath that I've got my 160/80 antenna, which is a off-center fed type antenna with a 4:1 matching balun, a big air cord RF coax choke at the bottom, and that works very well on 160 and 80, and on 40 at about 60 feet, or about 18 metres or so. I've got a 40 metre 2-element beam which can be switched in 4 directions off a single feed line with some relays at the top at the feed point, and that's proven to be quite a good antenna. It's obviously not as good as a large beam, but it does provide some gain and front to back in 4 directions at the flick of a switch, and I don't think it's probably any worse than the 2-element wide beams I was previously using for 40. So I've managed to get that tower up, and I've rebuilt the spider beam, which was an interesting journey because I decided to change the design slightly. I'll come to that in a little while. And I've got all those antennas on there now, so effectively I've got 6 bands on the one tower, and everything seems to be working okay at the moment. And I've also got some HF receive antennas, which I've been working on whilst actually I didn't really have the tower in use. I put some HF receive antennas up around about 100 metres away from the main transmit antennas, mainly because I was trying to get some slightly better performance for my single operator 2 radio activity, and it's been quite interesting. We've come up with a couple of new designs that seem to be slightly better than perhaps just a standard dipole, and also give me several bands and some directivity. So and I've got 2 beverages now. I've finished the second of the beverages yesterday, so I've got 2 beverages that are about 130 metres long each beverage. So yes, I'm I'm kind of ready. Some of it is really a bit of a lash up, but it's good enough to get me through the contest, and it doesn't really replace having a nice big shack or having 2 towers or anything like that. But it's interesting what you can do if you really want to take part in the contest. And the setup I've got them out with the HF receive antennas is probably as good as I've had, and of course the beverages are really good on the low bands as well. It's pretty hard to do low band 160/80 operation from here without some sort of beverage or dedicated receive antenna. There's just too much noise. And the 2 beverages I've put up this time, they're not terminated, they're unterminated beverages, so essentially they're bi-directional, which is in the contest is quite useful, because basically at a flick of a switch it gives me 4 directions on the low bands. They work really well on 40 as well, so really get 3 bands out of them. They even work quite well on 20, but they're not really designed for 20. So on 20, 15 and 10 I'm using some smaller antennas. They're 70 foot long, they're off-center fed, but they're not off-center fed at the normal point that you would imagine with a 4:1 balun, etc. They're off-center fed at a point that gives me a fairly decent match into 75 ohm coax. And I modelled this on NEC, and I found that at a certain point I could build an OCF type dipole with a fairly decent match to 75 ohm. The SWR on 2015 and 10 on both these antennas is no worse than around about 1.5 to 1, and the SWR on 40 is not great. It's probably around about 2.5 to 1, but it's actually usable on 40. I've worked quite a bit of DX on 40 meters with both the antennas I've got. So the first of these receive antennas that I put up is about 70 foot long, 22 meters or whatever, and it's around about 12 meters high or 40 foot high, and it's fed 3 meters in from one end, which seems a little bit counterintuitive, with the 75 ohm coax via an air cord, very simple air cord, RF choke type balance setup, just around about 7 turns on a 100mm diameter, trying to keep it all fairly lightweight. And that worked really quite well, and that pretty well runs northwest southeast. And then I've put a second one up which is at right angles to that. Bear in mind these are tree mounted antennas, so it's not anything you really need a tower for. And the second one I put up, one end is at 70 feet and the other end is down at around about 25 feet, so it's a bit of a sloper, and again it's fed around about 3 meters from one end, which I've found gives me quite a good match on the 75 ohm coax. I'm just using RG6 top coax. So I've got that one at right angles, and that also gives me some directivity. And switching between the two is quite interesting on 20 and 15 and 10 meters. The signals will vary depending on which antenna you select and which path the signals are coming in on. And I found that on transmit I could use them quite effectively on 2015 and 10. They were really quite good, providing the band was fairly good. They're not going to replace a beam, but they do have a little bit of gain, and they do have some directivity. They're fairly omnidirectional, but they do have peaks in the polar diagram. So initially I fed both of these antennas with RG6 coax, and then I decided with the larger of the two, or the higher of the two, the one that slopes from 70 feet down to around about 25 feet, I decided to change out the RG6 and put RG11 in, which in theory there's quite a bit less loss, but the difference is not huge. It's around about 1.5 dBs, probably on 20 meters. Bear in mind I've got at least a 100-meter run to both these antennas, so the RG6 is a little bit lossy on 20 and probably more so on 15 and 10, obviously. So the RG11 was probably a good choice. And the reason that this has been an interesting exercise is because I've been messing around with these RX type HF antennas for a while now, trying to find something that will cover 3 or 4 bands for receive to help me with the single operator 2 radio operation. And these are probably about as good as I've got so far, and this has probably taken a few years of experimenting and trying out different antennas. So first of all, I'd normally model the antenna in NEC and see what it looks like and see how it works. And with these OCF antennas, I was pretty keen to get away from the 4-to-1 Ballon type setup at the feed point. So I just wanted to try and go straight in with the 75 ohm, and I've been able to achieve that by not eliminating, but moving the feed point from the traditional maybe 20 or 25% from one end to a lot less than that, down to around about 3 meters from one end. So the feed point is not where you would normally expect it for an OCF type antenna, but they do work, and they work quite well. And they come back into the shack, and I've got receive bandpass filters for 2015 and 10 on both radios. I haven't got any filtering on 40 because it's not entirely necessary. Most of this single operator 2 radio work I'm doing is really from 40 down to say 20, or 40 to 15, or 20 to 15, or whatever. It's not so much 160, 80, 40 type operation. So, but with the distance I've got between the receive antennas and the transmit antennas, I can pretty well get away with low band type SO2R without any RX receive filtering. However, I've got the bandpass filters set up for 2015 and 10. They work really well. They're really simple designs. Going to just modelled them with there's lots of this modelling software around to do to figure out a nice bandpass filter with a decent shape. They're not hard to build. Put them in some boxes with the addition of some switches. It's a really simple way to get on and experiment with single operator 2 radio and remove the interband interference, because without the filters, certainly on 2015 and 10, there's definitely some interference between the 2 radios, and that's not good. You don't need that. The whole idea with the SO2R is you're trying to run the 2 radios, a radio in each ear, and I've got a homebrew switching box which routes the audio depending on, if I'm listening on radio 1, or if I'm transmitting on radio 1, I'm listening with both ears on radio 2, and vice versa. And it also acts as a simple interlock box as well, so I can't transmit on the two radios at once. And that's a pretty simple setup. The receive antennas are fairly simple. I haven't got any transmit bandpass filtering at all for single operator 2 radio, but I'm getting away with it because I've got the distance between my receive antennas and my transmit antennas. The other nice thing about the receive antennas is the band noise on the receive antennas is much lower than it is on the spider beam. So whilst this was going on, I had some idea, or whilst I was experimenting with these HF receive antennas, I had some idea I may be able to get geared up to do CQ worldwide. And when I really made the decision to do that, I decided to remodel and rebuild the spider beam. And what I should mention is with both these OCF receive antennas, I've rebuilt those with aluminium wire. So I've used a 2mm thick electric fence wire actually, which is readily available here. It's relatively cheap. It's very durable. You've got to take a little bit of care with the terminations, because you need to try and make sure that when it's terminated that you try and waterproof those terminations. Otherwise you may get problems with dissimilar metals and corrosion or whatever. But I haven't had a problem with that yet. It's been quite a good experience. It's been quite rugged. It's nice to work with the aluminium. It's nice and light. It's quite forgiving. It doesn't stretch much. I've experimented trying to stretch it out, and you can get a bit of stretch out of it, but I think it's very low. It's not, and I think once it's initially stretched, it's more a question of taking the stretch out of the stranding, because it's a stranded version. So it's not a soft drawn type aluminium. It's quite this electric fence wire is quite rugged, and 2mm diameter is quite a good size to work with. And because it's lighter, it's much easier to string an antenna and not worry about the weight or the sag or whatever. And that's helped me a little bit with some of the larger antennas that I've rebuilt with the aluminium wire. So my spider beam previously, I remodeled that from the standard spider beam dimensions and wire, and I remodeled it in NEC just because, well, I thought it'd be a good thing to do. And actually, largely it has been a good thing to do. And then I remodeled it again to take into account using the aluminium wire at the 2mm diameter. Came out with a new set of dimensions, rebuilt the spider beam from scratch again. It's had a few rebuilds, that antenna. And really happy with the results. Right out of, without virtually any adjustment at all, I had a good match on 2015 and 10. So bear in mind with the spider beam, it's got, on 20 meters, it's 3 elements, 15, 3 elements, and 10 meters, it's 4 elements. And it's fairly wide space, so it's fairly forgiving. But I played around a little bit with the wire dimensions for the driven element and the, not for the driven element, for the reflector and the directors, and just try to optimize it a little bit at the height that I would normally have the antenna, which is up at around about 24 meters. And this has worked really well because I've got on 20 meters now, I've got the best front to back I've ever had out of this antenna. And also same is true on 15 and 10, but on 20 meters, it's really extraordinary. I can have S9 signals off the front of the beam and off the back, they virtually disappear. You can hear them, but there's nothing on the S meter at all. And the front to side's obviously very good as well. So it's really, really worked out quite well. And I'm very happy with the results after modeling it and then building it. The one thing that I now do with the spider beam is I have separate feed lines. So I've got a separate feed line for 2015 and 10, and each one of those feed lines has just got an air cord balun. There's no ferrites or anything, it's just an air core balun, 20 meters, it's around about 7 turns, 100mm diameter, and proportionately less for 15 and 10. That seems to work really well. Just trying to keep it simple. The spider beam, the original spider beam design uses a ferrite balun and the feed lines all joined together, and that's all, that's fine, and it does work. And I've used it that way, but I was kind of keen to see if I could get just a little bit better performance by using separate feed lines, air core balance, etc. And also just remodeling, just remodeling with the type of wire that I'm currently using. And it seems to have worked really well. I'm pretty happy with the results on those 3 bands. So that's going to be interesting. The 40-meter antenna, I've got a 2-element wire beam that you can switch in 4 directions. It's a single mast type beam. I've spoken about this before on some of the other podcasts. It works really well, but I wanted to try and get it onto the same tower as the spider beam and obviously the 160/80 antenna. And I thought this is going to be a little bit tricky. So what I decided to do is leave the spider beam up at 24 meters, and then at about 18, 19 meters or whatever further on down the tower on the next section, top of the next section, I've mounted the 40-meter wire beam. And so far that seems pretty good. I'm getting front to back. I'm getting some sort of perceived gain. It models quite well, and it's a great match. There's no problem with the match at all. It's very close to 1-to-1 in all 4 directions. So that's quite nice because with the flick of a switch I can select any direction. It's quite the pattern's quite broad with the design. It's not probably not an optimized beam as such, but it does work quite well for a 2-element beam. And then on 160/80 I've got an off-center fed antenna, as I mentioned before. So I've managed to get the 6 bands on the one tower, which I'm really happy with. I've got the receive antennas set up, pretty happy with that. The beverages work really well, and I've rebuilt the beverages as well and used the same 2mm aluminium electric fence wire. So, for years and years and years, I've only really been using copper, and now I'm using this aluminium wire, providing I don't have problems with terminations, and that remains to be seen. Then I don't think I'll be going back to copper at the moment. It's pretty important with the terminations just to make sure that you prevent moisture getting in there. I think that's the big issue really. If you can prevent the moisture getting into the termination area, you're unlikely to get any problems with dissimilar metals corrosion. but it could happen, and it'll be an interesting experiment to see how things work out with it. I've taken quite a bit of care over all the terminations with that. But for example, the RG6 terminations use a nickel-plated type crimp connector, and that's straight onto the aluminium braid of the RG6. And I've not had any problems with that. That's actually worked really well. I've been using those crimp type compression connectors for some time on my receiver antennas, on the beverages and also the HF receiver antennas. It's been absolutely fine. So it's going to be quite interesting. The other aspect of this contest is this gives me an opportunity to use my new call sign, which is VK6T, Victor Kilo 6 Tango. So for VK operators now, we've got 2x1 call signs which you can use only in contests. So there will be a lot of new VK short call signs in this contest. And for me, VK6T is really good for CW, much better than VK6 Lima Whiskey. CW, that will help quite a bit. So looking forward to using that. And yes, we'll just see how conditions are. I guess the main thing is that we don't get a disturbance of any kind. But if things stay the way they are, then it should be quite good. And I'm looking forward to the contest anyway. And then hopefully into the new year, when I get the workshop and the new shack built, then I can and get the second tower back up again. I can maybe optimize some of the antennas. But it's actually, you can get quite a, if you use your imagination with one tower, you can obviously get 6 bands out of one tower. The tricky thing sometimes is just trying not to get too much interaction between the antennas. That's probably the biggest issue. But so far, from what I can gather with the tests I've done over the last week or so, the antennas, the way I've got them oriented on the block of land here, they seem to be okay. So we shall see how things work out, and first progress on from there. Anyway, that's probably the wrap up for what's been happening here over the last few months. There's probably not a great deal more to report, and hopefully get a chance. Look forward to seeing you in the contest and have fun. 73s for now from Kevin, VK6 Lima Whiskey.